What a choice. You're at food camp.
Food camp.
Well, I had mine
Hello.
Hello there, Howard.
How you doing?
What are you doing, Howard?
Creating mischief.
Okay.
I'm doing a DVD for the church. This event
I think that
and
is
the church.
fantastic.
So I gotta record it.
Hi, Howard.
Hey, Connie. How you doing?
Pretty good. You?
Great. Great.
Oh, that's right. His DVD that
Smile, you're on candid camera. How was the food tonight?
Excellent. The ladies did a fine job, and perhaps some men as well.
Some guys too,
You want to try this? It's got grapes and marshmallows.
Do you know any of the people in these pictures?
A few I recognize.
Just for tonight, called Through the Years. They're going to sing songs from each decade, from the time of the fire to the present time. So let's give them a great big congregational welcome.
Requested through the years, and our first two from the 1930s, that they're also one of our successes. We did them at our competition. We got wonderful reviews, didn't we? We became third. Yes. We were third in our division and fifth overall with these two wonderful, and they are old songs, and the titles tell you that. Is Whatever Happened to the Old Songs, and the other one is Old Songs, Old Friends. And they're very apropos. They are the 1930s as requested. So. Whatever happened to pardon me, boys, at the Chattanooga choo-choo, choo-choo. Track 29, well, you can give me a shine, 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 well, fine, yeah, I can afford to board the Chattanooga choo-choo, choo-choo. I got my fare, and just a trifle to spare. You leave the Pennsylvania station about 3:45. You read a magazine and then you're in Baltimore.
nice memories of old churches. Most of them have moved out of the area they're in now, but it was a nice memory that I have.
When I had Becky's job in 1941, these weren't even teenagers. But they were my favorites then, and they're still my favorites.
Moving into the 50s now, Bob's got a tale about Christmas trees.
Well, some of my most vivid memories connect to the Boy Scout troop, and one of the side effects of the Boy Scout troop was the way we harvested our Christmas trees here. It wasn't always that we used artificial trees in the church, and Harry Benson was a big mover in the Boy Scouts and was chairman of the troop committee here for many years. And Harry's connection to the Boy Scouts allowed us to get live trees from a sort of a tree farm which was north of the 8th Street entrance to the Scout Camp, which is now the back door of the Scout Camp. We went out there, and there was snow on the ground 8 inches deep, and selected the trees. And there was a man, I can't remember his name, I got a senior moment for him. It was Bert Reeder, Miller Lumber, or Miller Davis, who had access to a truck who hauled them into town for us. I remember one side in this activity was I had a Beagle Basset Hound for rabbit hunting at the time, so I took her out with me, and Harry and I had to chase down that Basset Hound. She was having a ball out there shagging rabbits. But we finally got her corralled in the car and got the trees loaded on the truck. By the way, there's a tree across the road, the street here, in the park across Academy Street. You probably know this very red maple there, is in its glory now. It was put there in 1967, in the 50th anniversary of the Boy Scout troop from this church, Troop Number 50. It was originated in 1917, long before most of us, a lot of us were around. I wasn't around quite yet.
Bob, you also have a story about the garden, ice cream socials.
Where the new chapel now stands used to be a sunken garden. And Harry Benson was organized every year. We got the ice cream from the Carousel, it was out in West Main area. We had an ice cream social down there to raise money for the scout troop. And Harry was the big mover. And of course we had Rudy Yankee. I don't think Rudy belonged to this church, but he was one of the most dedicated scout masters I ever met in my life. But then that time, I remember such as Stan Rumble, Norman Melzer, Harry Benson, Ted Ray, Dick Klepper, and maybe I've forgotten some others. Pardon me if I have forgotten you. It had much to do with the scout troop in the church at that time. We took them on canoe trips and so on and so forth. And I remember one day up in the Muskegon River, Ted Ray and I formed an assembly line. We had the Coleman stoves with double wide pancake grills on them, and the scouts lined up and just kept coming around in a circle. Pancakes. I thought it was going to be a never-ending job. Finally, after about 2 hours, and I think we had them filled up.
Mary Melzer, I've got to ask you, I had heard the story that Norm was out at the scout camp with a very fancy car and punctured a hole in the gas tank.
I never heard that.
You never? Well, I heard the story.
Well, could I speak to that?
Yes.
Okay. On one of these trips, these canoe trips, you can't hear me?
On one of the canoe trips, our son had just had his braces from his teeth removed the day before. And on one of these trips, he tripped. And to this day, he's only got half a tooth up there. And also his father, Norm, was very active in the Scouts here. This was a terrific troop.
Thank you, Mary.
Well, to finish my story that I heard right from the scoutmaster. The boys chewed gum and they put the gum on Norm Melzer's gas tank, so he kept the gas enough to get it back home. And do you remember George Storms, big George Storms that sang in our church choir with a big voice? Well, he was sleeping in one of these tents out at the scout camp, and all of a sudden this big, huge George Storm yell came out. Well, a raccoon was trying to get his candy bar from under his pillow. The scouts were great.
Carol's got one.
My memories of the 50s include Dorothy Kling and the youth groups then. And those were probably the first mission trips that we had. And to earn money for those mission trips, we did work for parishioners. And Cindy Charnley was newly married at that time. And I remember going to her house and washing windows. And, I'm sure they did it just as a way to give us money. But we raked leaves and 1 week we'd do it for pay, and then the next week we'd do it for people who weren't able to do it for themselves, and we did it for free. And, we had money raisers all year.
Where'd you go on your mission trip?
The one is mostly in the Chicago area. That's where Dorothy had familiarity. After I graduated from high school, the group worked for many years and earned enough money to go to Puerto Rico, if I remember right. But I would have been in college at that point.
Our basketball champions. I tell you, we had the best teams in this school. Look at all the trophies those kids won. And of course, the Y was right over there, and so that was where they played their games. One year, we were so good, we won the championship in this district and had to go to Grand Rapids. Well, the boys went up there, and the team that they had to play, they saw before they went.
Good greeters. The first greeter I remember was Bus Brown, and it seemed like he was part of the church. He was almost a minister. It was Sunday after Sunday, month after month, year after year, Bus Brown greeted you. And I always sort of wondered how he took it so long, and then I remembered he was in the retail business like me. It didn't hurt. But after Bus, Cy Larson was here for many, many years, another wonderful man that took that job, I don't know how many years, and then finally Hugh Jones, and we were certainly blessed by those three men.
And I remember that after Hugh died, no one was stepping up to do this on a regular basis, so they started recruiting people as we do today. But only men were ever allowed to be greeters in those days. That the women kind of filled in later.
Oh,
Sunday night board.
remember when you were put on a board, the 1st of January, the new boards, sometime during the month of January, you were invited to Harriet and Bill Keith's house for Sunday nights, so that your board got acquainted with everybody. Who can tell me what Harriet Keith served every single time? Charlotte can.
Finger sandwiches, half hot dog buns
Absolutely.
with cheese spread on them.
She had this great recipe. It's in the, I put it in the cookbook. Some of you probably don't even know what Spam is in a can, But it's a can of Spam and some mayonnaise and some hard-boiled eggs, and you just grind it all up with some ketchup. And what's that,
I'm sorry.
And then she split hot dog buns or hamburger, and she spread that on there, put it under the broiler. And Sunday movie night in January, if you were on the board, you went to Harriet's house and had Spam sandwiches.
And they had a high turnover on the board.
You didn't return.
Well, we're gonna vault into the 70s now, 1970s.
Following up Dorothy, believe it or not, I always sort of envied the people who got invited to everybody's house, but I never got invited. And finally one year I increased my pledge. I think a lot of you remember Bill Stone on that edition. He was retired, but he would go around with bricks in his hand and matching the old building to the new bricks. So their new addition was such a beautiful compliment to the older building.
I taught Sunday school a couple times. First time that Harry and I taught Sunday school was right in this room with the first and second graders, and we had a lot of fun with them. And then later on, I went into the 3-year-olds, and they're a joy because in September when they come in, you wonder. By December, things are looking up, and at the end of the year, they're real dolls, and I really enjoyed them a lot. I'd sort of like to go back to the Y. I was at the Y the other day, and I said something about, somebody asked me where I was going this weekend, and I told them, and I said, well, you know, our parking lot is where the Y used to be. What are you talking about, they said to me. And I didn't go swimming at the Y, but I went bowling at the Y, and a lot of people don't realize that there was 4 alleys in the bowling, in the Y. I used to, that was my gym period. We walked from Central over to the Y, bowl 1 game, walk back.
I would like to say that both of our girls had Katie for a Sunday school teacher, and we still have the ornaments at our house that she made for them.
And I still have the rose bushes you gave me.
In the 70s, we also had church retreats. Now, I think they probably started in the late 60s, but we started going in 73. And some of the later ones, there were as many as 150 people there, and everybody had an assignment. Everybody had to cook one meal, and you were assigned that meal to cook, and there were big menus and just exactly what you were to fix. The kids had to set the tables, and everybody had a program responsibility. You might be a storyteller, you might have Sunday morning worship, you might do the square dancing, but everybody had one assignment in one meal, and nobody had to do the whole thing. And those were some wonderful times.
They were at Pilgrim Haven.
They were at Pilgrim Haven, that's right, the congregational camp. The later years, Becky, what was the name of the camp? Camp Warren. After Pilgrim Haven was sold, there were some at Camp Warren, and probably they ended about 1988, 89.
We were wondering about when women were allowed to usher and to serve communion and serve on boards. If anybody has a story about when that change occurred, genders both participated in that. Anybody else?
I don't remember a date, but I do know that there were deaconesses who prepared the elements and deacons who served.
Okay, don't remember the date, but deaconesses prepared the elements and deacons served.
We had to watch the little glasses.
Okay.
The deaconesses.
Deaconess
watched the little glasses.
had to wash the little glasses. Cut up the bread. Okay. We're starting to zero in on this. Yeah. Does anybody else have a story about a possible time when that happened? Jane, you look like you're about to hear.
Went on the boards in the late 1930s.
You were on the board.
1930s.
Deaconesses.
Swissler was the first one to go on the board.
Late 1930s for women being on the board. Luce Whistler? Swissler, okay. Was one of the first women on the boards. Anybody else?
There were big youth groups in the 80s, and these were the years of owning a bus. And a couple of stories, the one year we had the big yellow banana, the big I don't know, 66 passenger school bus that actually held 44 people, and they had to take some seats out to make room for the camping gear and pots and pans for cooking. And they had so many kids go that they had to take an extra truck and trailer to carry all the luggage because there wasn't room for it on the bus. And then there was another year, we actually had the new bus, and we still had the old bus. And there were so many kids that wanted to go that they decided that they would take the old bus, which held more people. And the old bus got into Canada somewhere, and something happened, it died. And I can remember racing around with Charlie to get a trailer hitch put on the new bus. So they took the new bus and a trailer, and so the new bus and the trailer took all the kids and all the luggage, and they had the other bus repaired and brought it back to us.
There's a bus story too about the time that the youth group had permission from a grocery store to use their parking lot for the night. And their bus was vandalized and all the tires were slashed. And nobody would take a credit card then. And so they had to gather up all the cash that the kids had, and all the leaders pooled all their cash to get new tires on that car to get back.
Okay, 1990s, that's one of our sad times in our church. And who do we have to thank for that? But Dick Means. I'm sure that all of us appreciate everything he did for us.
Well, I guess that brings us up pretty much to a new decade that we started about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe. And I've been told that the search committee contacted Susie Webb in, what's it, Carbondale. And they said, Susie, who is the best minister in the area that we could maybe interview? Well, she said, I'm the best one, but there is Bob Noblet.
I'd like to thank the panel of storytellers for telling their stories, but before we close off, I just wanted to open up an opportunity for anybody in the audience that might want to tell a little story of one of their memories, significant memories from any decade. Okay? All right. And we'll pass the mic.
I'll have you know that Susanna Winslow has her name signed at National City Bank on the Susanna Winslow checking account because the bank manager insisted that they have Susanna Winslow signed. They wouldn't have anyone else. So I dutifully wrote down her name, and the girl said, oh yes, that's what they have. Another story, I remember Judy was driving the bus with the was it the Bell Ladies? And they got stuck in the middle of nowhere someplace, and they were trying to get a hold of help, and they forgot to turn the switch on the bus, so they got the other gas tank going.
She said the rear end fell open too, and it was almost back door to the bus. So
Oh, come on, Mary, tell us. You can tell them right from there.
Our bell choir had been to a festival in Albion, and on the way home, we were just coming out of town, and the back doors of the bus flew open. We had our bell cases in the back and all of our music. And Jane Yoon was playing in our group at that time, and she and her husband were driving. They weren't on the bus, and she came flying up. They were honking the horn and came up beside us and said, the doors are open on the bus, you better stop. And we didn't know it. So we stopped, but we had to take all the bell cases out of the back end, put them up in the seats because the doors didn't locked too well in the back. Quite an experience.
Ah, here we have another story.
I haven't been a member all that long, but I am so appreciative of the hospitality of the congregation. And no one tonight has mentioned the Pilgrim Club. Do any of you remember the Pilgrim Club? And when we joined, Bob and Jerry Powell were our sponsor, and they continued to nurture us for years. We became fast friends, and they always introduced, and helped us get acquainted and do things together. We had our buddies in the years.
I have a story.
Okay.
I was teaching Sunday school with my son and George McCutcheon, and they were probably about 5 years old. So they suggested that the lesson be on obeying and duty. And so I asked all the kids if they had any jobs or responsibilities at home. And somebody had to help with the dishes, and someone had to feed the animal, the dog. And we got to George McCutcheon, and George said, I have to take the beer bottles to the basement.
Once again, we'd like to, if you could give her a hand to our storyboard up here as well. We could probably spend the entire night telling stories, and I love the connection of the sermons that have been recently this fall about the structure or the space and the building and metaphor. Well, the stories are a foundation. They're definitely part of the foundation, and if you could listen to these walls and if they could speak, and you've heard that before, you'd spend another decade listening to stories. So thanks for your listening and your telling tonight. Thank you.
This just really touched my heart tonight. I wasn't here for many of these stories because I've been a member here for about 12 years, I think, and it's really touched my heart tonight to hear all of this. So I'm sure you've all enjoyed it too. In honor of this evening, Bob Noblette has written us a hymn. And I'm not going to leave the mic on here to sing this.
Yep, you'll know this too. It's Arise, Your Light Has Come. All right, here we go. Everybody, ready? Thanks to you, good God.
choir can always take more members.
More piano players. I know it's getting really late, and I really appreciate everyone coming tonight. It's been wonderful for me. And I think we'd like to close with benediction.
And our thanks to Pam, who coordinated so much of this. Eternal God, we're grateful for the memories and the stories that bind us together. And we are also people who anticipate the stories yet to be created. And so enable us to continue the storytelling, enable us to be those stories in such a way that your glory is reflected. And now may the blessing of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit go with each of you, both now and forevermore. Amen.